At the Walton Family Foundation, all grant-making is considered an investment for the achievement of important goals. Whether it's increasing the number of high-quality education options available to families or conserving ocean and river systems, every dollar we invest is intended to generate results. Establishing good performance measures for each grant helps grantees and the foundation establish a shared vision of success and a way to measure progress. Getting them on paper can be a challenge, so let's break it down into some smaller pieces. Performance measures help clarify the nature and scope of the work being proposed in your grant application, and they set everyone up for learning. What's more, they provide a way of assessing progress toward meeting key targets during the course of the grant period. This way, if something isn't working, together we can make corrections mid-course. At the end of the grant period, performance measures will play an important role in determining the success of the grant and generating lessons learned. So, what exactly are these performance measures? They are clear statements that describe your work and your intended goals in a way that will make it clear if the goals are met or not. Performance measures are divided into two key groups. These are two terms you'll want to get familiar with before moving forward: outputs and outcomes. Outputs cover what you plan to deliver or produce. They are the products, programs, and services you're going to accomplish with the grant. Outcomes are the intended changes you expect to see in the world as a result of your work, such as increased knowledge and capacity, improved policy, or a healthier fishery. Note that while achieving an output is largely within your control, you will likely not have full control over whether or not an outcome is achieved. Think of it like this. If you are growing a garden, the output is the fruit that you produce, and the outcome is happy and healthy eaters. Now, there's one other term we want to familiarize you with, and that is activities. When creating meaningful performance measures, it can be really useful to distinguish between activities and outputs. So let's revisit our garden analogy. The acts of tilling the soil, planting the seed, and watering would be activities. These activities are essential, and we will discuss your plans to complete them. However, we don't need you to write the activities down in the form of performance measures. For performance measures, the idea is to focus on the handful of key products, programs, and services your activities will generate, the outputs, and the changes in the world that will result, the outcomes. Got it? Okay, let's move on. When creating the list of outputs and outcomes, remember to think through the connecting links, the anticipated cause and effect relationships between the outputs and outcomes. In most cases, outcomes are expected to lead to other, longer-term effects, which you will also want to capture if they occur within the time frame of the grant. Outcomes occurring beyond the grant period should not be included in grant performance measures. Each of your performance measures needs to include 5 key components: who, what, by when, how much, and how we will know. First, who will do the work or exhibit the resulting change. For outputs, the who is often you or one of your partners. For outcomes, the who is generally the target of your efforts, like decision makers or fishermen or coral reefs. Second, what do you plan to produce, or what change do you expect to come of it? Third, by when will the work be completed or the desired change occur? Every performance measure needs a timeline for when it will be achieved. And remember, the when should always be within the grant period. Fourth, how much will be produced, or how much change will occur? This is where you establish a measurable target, ideally a number, percent, or other numerical benchmark for how much you intend to accomplish in each output and outcome. And finally, how will we know the work was completed or the change occurred? This will be the measurement strategy that you will use, or the evidence you will provide to determine whether your target was met. Demonstrating completion can be difficult, especially for some outcomes, but it's important that you try to use the best evidence available to show your work and results. Here's a real-life example of performance measures at work. In this example, an organization wants to train fishermen on the benefits of and how to go about voluntarily establishing a fish refuge or no-take area, an area that will be closed to fishing to help ensure that fishing in adjacent areas will be economically and environmentally sustainable over time. The output of training fishermen on establishing an effective fish refuge is expected to lead to a series of outcomes over time. The first result or outcome of the program is that the fishermen understand the benefits of fish refuges and all commit to establishing one that reflects the science they've been taught. The second outcome is that the fishermen abide by their agreement not to fish inside the refuge's boundaries. In time, according to the project's theory of change, this fish refuge will have abundant fish and healthy habitat, and fisheries in nearby areas will be more economically and environmentally sustainable. These elements will become the starting point for writing performance measures. This is what a good performance measure for the output of training fishermen on establishing effective fish refuges might look like. By June 30th, the organization will train at least 30 local fishermen in the theory and design of effective fish refuges, as measured by training session materials and attendance records. Notice we have the who, that's the organization. The what is the training of the fishermen. How much is denoted by the number 30. By when is June 30th. And the session materials and attendance records serve as the how we will know. Let's move on to the first outcome and see what a performance measure might look like. By August 1st, the fishermen understand the benefits of a fish refuge and commit to establishing a 10 square kilometer refuge, protecting a range of habitats, as evidenced by a map of the future refuge's boundaries and an agreement signed by all the members of the local fishing cooperative not to fish there. Again, each of the 5 components of a good performance measure is present: who, what, how much, when, and how we will know. The next outcome could be written this way: by December 31st, all members of the local fishing cooperative are abiding by the fish refuge agreement, as evidenced by patrols showing no fishing inside the refuge's boundaries. As you develop your grant application, work your way through the outputs and outcomes until you have performance measures for each one. Your performance measure targets should be ambitious yet achievable. You may be concerned about putting so much detail down about a project that may be unpredictable. We understand that your work may be influenced by factors outside your control, and that you may need to shift strategies mid-course. Your performance measures will help us both to identify how and when a strategy must change, and what adjustments should be made. Now, let's look at the longer-term outcomes we hope to see occur over time. Within a few years, we would expect to see the rebounding of fish populations both inside and adjacent to the refuge. This longer-term outcome will likely take longer than the grant period, so you will not include a performance measure for this outcome for this grant. For new projects, setting targets can be challenging, and establishing a scientifically valid baseline might even be one of your grant outputs. Not every performance measure will need a baseline, but you should keep this in mind to include where it makes sense. How many performance measures do you need to include in your application? We don't expect you to include every possible output and outcome that may be accomplished, but we do want you to submit the small number of key measures that best represent the work you will accomplish, keeping in mind that, generally, larger and more complex projects should have more performance measures. Here are some general suggestions for the number of outputs and outcomes based on the size and duration of your grant. Note that these are guidelines. It is likely that some grants will require more or fewer performance measures, depending on the nature of a particular project. We hope this video will help you get started. Ultimately, good performance measures are designed to set you up for success and help us both learn what works best. If you still have questions, we're always here to help.